I just woke up one day. It was my birthday, the 2nd of December, and I said, I'm done with tool making. I want to become a personal trainer, and I just did it. I was diagnosed with leukemia when I was 29, where I was just really tired all the time. Still trained, but just tired all the time. And then I'll never forget the Sunday. I trained on the Sunday, and in between bicep curls, I would nearly pass out. So went to the doctors on the Monday. They gave me antibiotics and sent me home. Still felt really bad. Went to the doctors on Wednesday. He blood tested me. Thursday, I had a phone call from them at 8 o'clock in the morning, so we need to talk to you. 1 o'clock, I was talking to the doctor. 4 o'clock, I was in Frankston Hospital getting a bone marrow biopsy. Stayed in overnight. About 8:30 the next morning, they came in and they said, you've got leukemia, Rob. It doesn't matter how many Ferraris I had in the garage. When I had leukemia, that's it. It's just you and your body, and you're fighting for your life then, aren't you? I just can't understand how people cannot look after themselves better. But again, and I'm not being a hero, but I walked out of hospital and I walked into a gym. The doctor said, don't do it. I'd go and train for half an hour and I'd go home and sleep for 2. I think that changed me forever.
Welcome back to Peak Performance Hacks, and I'm your host, Dr. Gan. And today I've got Robert Lampe. He is a personal trainer. He's been in the industry for close to 20 years. He's also had his own gym that he's been running for close to 20 years. And he's built like a tank, and he's been training for the last 26 years. Welcome to the show, Robert.
Thanks, Gan. How are you?
Yeah, very good. A couple of reasons why I got you here. You've been in the industry working out personal fitness, a personal trainer, and you've probably worked with a lot of people. But I was thinking maybe you can talk me through what sort of got you into the industry to start off with, and then deciding to start your own gym.
Okay. I mean, I come from a tool making background. That's what I did as a trade, tool making. And I mean, I've been training since I was 18 years old, so I've been training a long time. And I reckon probably from 24, 25 onwards, it was just an obsession for me. I just loved it. My whole life just revolved around training. And, for me, I didn't have the internet at that time. So for me, it was reading a lot of books and try to self-educate myself, because I didn't have anyone to really help me. And probably from about 29 onwards, I just wanted to do personal training. And in my opinion, it's just me. In my opinion, you've got to lose that bodybuilding mentality, because it's too full on. The majority of people, whether it's work-related or whatever, they can't stick to that regime. So I had to lose that bodybuilding mentality, I suppose, to become a personal trainer. And I did that at about 32. And I just woke up one day. Again, it was my birthday, the 2nd of December, and I said, I'm done. I'm done with tool making. I want to become a personal trainer. I was lucky because my sister had a personal training studio, as you know, and I just said to her, I just want to become a personal trainer. And I just did it. I just stepped out of one industry straight into the other. So I was lucky. I was lucky in that respect. And I've never looked back. And then I met my wife, Katie, and we decided to start a gym. And that's been a lot of highs and lows.
Yeah.
When we first started, the industry has become, explain it to me, in my opinion, it's so diverse now. Back when I was training, there was just gyms, and you did either aerobics or you trained with weights. There was no F45. There was none of that.
Yeah.
No CrossFit. It was just train. And I think now, you really need to have a bit of a niche to succeed, unless you go massive and these huge gyms. And, it is a hard industry, but I'm lucky. I've got good clients. I've had clients for a long time, and, I probably service people my own age more than anything else now.
They're probably grown with you, I guess.
Good.
A lot of your clients are probably grown with you.
Yes, they have. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've had the majority of my clients I've had for a long, long time, but it's...
So you think that when you first started, obviously till 29, it was all about bodybuilding. And I think, when I look back in my life as well, I think it was that time where everyone was kind of looking up to the Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Ronnie Colemans of the day, and everyone wanted to be big. And I'm quite sure a lot of young men as well, that's what they they sort of look up to the fact that you look good if you've got big muscles and you look tough. So what caused the shift for you to sort of stop the bodybuilding and go into other parts of fitness?
Look, I competed in 2005. So I was already personal training when I'd competed. I just realised that I always say it's a scale gun. It's a scale from 0 to 100. And where you lie on that scale is, so if you go 50%, don't expect 100% results. So you it's like you can lead a horse to water, you can't make it drink. And that's where, for me, all I did was take a step back and I suppose just look at, not everyone can be a bodybuilder or follow that bodybuilding regime. So where do they fall on that scale? And, I always give everyone 100%, but where do they fall on that scale? And I think for me, I just had to take a step back and go, well, not everyone's going to do what, be like me, because I love bodybuilding. I'm not saying that I'm great or anything like that, but I've always been very disciplined where that's concerned. With eating, with training, I've always been very disciplined. And some people just don't have that discipline. It's not that they can't do it. It's just, in my opinion, it's not that they don't want to do it, but they don't put enough priority into it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So all I did was take a step back and go, well, not everyone can do it. How are we going to help everyone? But, don't be so, the chicken and broccoli diet type thing. And that's where, to me, you just have to take that step back and just realise that not everyone wants to do bodybuilding.
Yeah. And you've probably, over the years, seen so many diets, seen so many different exercises, as you mentioned, F45 and circuit training. And what is your consensus on? Do you still think it's subjective or individual based, or do you think that as
look, it's very individual? I think, Gan. I think.
Yeah.
The industry has become, to me, it hasn't progressed in a positive way. To me, it's actually progressed in a negative way. Everyone's individual and everyone's got, their thoughts on it, I suppose. But if you come from doing nothing to doing something, you're going to change. And that doing something is great. But that change will soon slow down and it will soon stop if you're not doing the right things. And I call it the fitness gym mentality. You do a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And then you're caught up in nothing. So, it's so diverse that, I always put it back to, and again, bodybuilding is extreme, but I put it back to the bodybuilding principles. It depends what you want out of it. But if you want body change, and most people do, unfortunately, they're not doing the right things to create that in a ongoing environment, if that makes sense. And I don't want to. It's hard.
You don't want to put anyone down when you say this, but
no,
it's your opinion, so it's fine. Because I was going to say that obviously it's your opinion and it's fine. What do you think people are doing right now that's probably not enabling them to get to where they want to in their fitness?
I think it depends a lot on age too.
Yeah,
I think we spoke about that, but I think it is age dependent a lot. But I think a lot of people are caught up in that. A lot of people want variety too, and that's where I find it's very difficult, because I'll write a program for somebody and they get bored of that program, but those principles will never change, because if you want to continually change your body, you still need to do those principles. And that's where people, again, fitness gym mentality, they go and do a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and I think that unfortunately we're in a era where it's instant gratification. So they'll try something and they won't stick to it long enough to create change, and they don't see that change, so then they're on to the next thing. And that's whether it be training, diet, whatever. To me, again, the principles are there. You just need to stick to those principles. And that's where, when I was growing up, we just trained. That was it. There wasn't any, the variation came in, what bench press am I going to do today? It wasn't it wasn't, I'm going to go do F45 today, or I'm going to go and do this. And again, it comes down to what do you truly want to achieve out of it all? And I think that, again, for some people, doing something is better than doing nothing, 100%. But it comes down to, what are your goals? And I always ask people about their goals whenever I have a consultation with them. And I think a lot of people have got a very poor misconception of how hard it is to change the human body too.
Yeah.
And, you can mess your body up really quick. I mean, how many people go on a 2-week holiday and they put on 10 kilos? It's going to take you 3 or 4 months to get rid of that, 10 kilos healthily. You can do it quicker, but are you going to be healthy at the end of it? Probably not. And that's, it is a hard industry now. And I think social media doesn't help at all. I think that's, to me, social media is, I call it a poison. I honestly do, because it's,
there's a lot of false information, out there. Yeah.
Yeah, there is.
But I was thinking, when it comes to training, let's say someone was serious, some of the people listening to this, maybe they're into performance and they're already training. There is this sentiment that if you continue doing a certain exercise for a period of time, your body's going to get used to it and you need to change it up by varying that type of exercise. How long would you say you would need before you change it up for variation to still get the muscle growth, for example, or the performance you're looking for?
I mean, look, I reckon, we'll take a bench press. A perfect example is a bench press. If you want to grow your chest, there's nothing better than a bench press. So I would do bench press all the time. Every workout I would be training, I'd be doing bench press. What I would change is the exercises around that bench press. But I'd do it probably every 6 weeks to 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Because I always say, I'm a very big believer in machines. If they're the right machines, they're very, very good. A lot of people shy away from them, but machines are awesome, especially if you've got injuries. But the right machine, the right brand of machine. And that's what I would change. So, you might do, a bench press for your first exercise, and then the second exercise might be an incline bench press. And then 6 weeks later, go do, dumbbell bench press. Or that's where the variation to me would come in. But again, if you want to be big and you want to perform, there's nothing better than a bench press. It's the same with the squat. It's the same with the dead. It's the same with chins. They're the main, they should be your basic movements. If you want to perform, it doesn't matter whether it be a football player or a bodybuilder, they should be your main staple. What you do around that, that's what changes.
Yeah. So you're basically chest, you're doing bench press for the chest, you're doing squats for the legs, you're doing pull-ups, is that right? Chin-ups?
Yep, chin-ups, for lats.
Chin-ups for the lats. Yep. And then what about your shoulders?
Military press. I would do a standing military press for shoulders. Yep.
So
and they're my five.
They're the five compound for everything.
Big movements, yep. And if you want to put on size, man, there's nothing better. Nothing better.
What about in terms of, there's always this talk about, the number of sets you do per workout and whether you do a full body versus you're doing, chest and back or chest and back and then, shoulders and biceps. What are your thoughts? Because when growing up, that was a thing. And I used to regiment my workouts based on, certain days and then try to, abs was sort of a waste of time because you kind of do abs when you do a lot of them anyway. So it used to be separated between weight training and cardio. What are your thoughts about that now?
The first question I always ask people is how many days do you want to train? Okay. And that's, my ideal is 4 days. That's my ideal. That's what I do. And my ideal is 4 days. And I break it up into, and there's method behind the madness. I do shoulders tries and I do them together because the only compound movement, so you're only using your triceps in shoulders when you're doing a press. Every other exercise you're not involving your triceps, so your triceps resting. So you get to your triceps are fresh. Then I do back and abs. So I do right abs into my programs. And then I do legs. And then I do chest and bis. And the reason why I split it that way is when you train back, you're going to train biceps. So training biceps with chest, your biceps are fresh. So it's about recovery too. Recovery is, I think, the most important part of training, because if you're not recovering, you're going to end up with an injury, and it will be a back injury or a shoulder injury, guaranteed. Mm-hmm. So I just love a 4-day split. But I always say I'm a very, very big believer in you have to train your whole body in the week. So how many days have you got to do that? If you got 2, well, I'll split your body up into 2 days, which is a big workout, hard workout. 3 is probably where I'd minimize it, and then 4 is ideal, and then have 3 days off. But
Yeah.
I'm just a big believer in training your whole body, because if you don't, a chain will always break at its weakest link, and you'll
Yeah.
always have injuries. The weaker parts of your body will always be prone to injury going all the time. And that's, I
Yeah.
think, why some people get back injuries too, because they don't train abs and they're doing some big
Mm.
movements. And, if you've got strong abs, to me, your back, lower back, and your abs are combined. They're separate
Yeah.
muscles, but they still work together in unison.
Yeah.
And again, if one side's strong, one's not, you open yourself up to injury. So
Yeah.
it's about looking at, I suppose, everything holistically as well, everything functioning as one. But yeah, I think 4 days is awesome. But again, not everyone has that time to do it.
And I'm glad you said that, because my next question was really gonna be about, business owners and a lot of people that are busy, really professionals, anyone that's essentially busy. And I think, as you rightfully said, time is the biggest factor. So what do you think in terms of the people that you're training? I'm assuming anywhere between 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s and above, that are completely busy, and what seems to be the thing that's holding them back? Is it purely just time and not being able to do these workouts, or is it something else?
Look, I think, look, I've trained a lot of businessmen in my time, a lot. And honestly, I don't want to offend anybody, because it's not what I'm about. But I just think it's priorities going. Where do you put your priorities? And I train a guy at the moment. He's mid-30s, got a very good business. He's a civil engineer, does a lot of concrete work. And he trains with me twice a week, and he does 2 sessions on his own. It's taken me a long time. Don't worry. It's taken me about a year for him to realise about nutrition and all the rest of it. But he books in with me twice a week. He even said to me, in the beginning, he'd finish his workout with me, and he'd have about 30 calls on his phone. Now his
Mm.
guys that work for him know that they can't contact him between those, Monday 6:30 to 7:30 and Wednesday. So at the end of the workout, he's got no phone calls, because they know they can't reach him. So they're actually making decisions for themselves, which is better for him anyway. So
Yeah.
it's where do you put your priorities, I suppose. And a lot of people are time poor, and we're very time poor, especially now. But priorities, and I
Yeah.
always say, the unfortunate thing is businessmen will put, I don't know, 50 or 60% into their family. They'll put, 100% into their business, and they'll put 20% into themselves going. And out of all that, they're the biggest asset, because without them, where's their family and where's their business?
Yeah.
If they
Yeah.
put a little bit more time into themselves, they'd feel better, they'd function better, they'd be mentally better, because they're coping with stress in a positive way rather than a negative way. Everything is going to be better for them. It's that taking that step and, making sure,
Mm.
well, it's taking that step and prioritizing something for themselves.
Yeah.
And,
And I think it's
I
as you
don't
said,
want,
it's the first step of doing it, like it's when you
it
start
is.
anything and you haven't done it, it's going to be extremely difficult, and then it just gets easier and you feel
It
better
is.
as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I always say the 2 first weeks of car accident sore going. You can't, and it is. You're just car accident sore. You're just wrecked. But,
Yeah.
not my fault.
And I think it's interesting you mentioned the 30-year-old that you're working with, but I think when I look back when I was in my 30s as well, it's quite easy to think you're invincible, because you're probably at your strongest, and it's only
100%.
as you get a little bit older that you realize the recovery isn't as easy as it used to be.
No.
And we've spoken about this, that a lot of people are on the gear, taking steroids or other sort of performance enhancing drugs, even at a young age, to try to get them there. What are your thoughts about, because it's so rampant now? Have you obviously come across people that you train that are on them?
Look, I'm a gym owner. So, we're pretty good. At our gym, as in there's not a lot of guys on it.
Yeah.
Again, it comes down to, you know, it's instant gratification going. And a lot of these young guys, they don't, they'll go on the gear, but they won't focus on their diet.
Hmm.
And food is more anabolic than any substance on the planet. You can stick any chemical in your body whatsoever, but at the end of the day, food is the most anabolic substance that we have. So, they might put on 2 or 3 kilos because they're on the gear, but they don't focus on their food. They eat crap, which is a really bad thing to do anyway, because it's not good for their body. But if they'd rather take chemistry than focus on their food. And that's what I try to, instill in everyone that I train. The food is the key. And they say 80% is in your diet. And I think as we age, I think it becomes a lot more important, especially protein, Gan. I think that it is, and look, I weigh all my protein all the time. So I know exactly how much protein I'm taking in. I have 6 meals a day. I weigh my protein. I don't care about anything else in the off season, if you want to call, during winter, because who cares if you put on a bit of body fat. But then, as the weather starts to warm up, I just clean my carbs up. But I always have, a lot of good fats and a lot of protein, because I think that's the key. And if you don't have the protein, you're going to break down 100%. And going, I can tell, I'm not being a hero, but I can tell all the people that train and eat enough protein and the people that don't. Because the people that don't never, ever advance in their weights or in their strength. They just don't. They struggle all the time. And I think that's people need to look at their diet before they look at compounds. There's certain, and I think the problem is it's too easy to obtain. Where's it coming from? Because you're not getting it from a chemist.
Yeah.
They don't, and unfortunately, the younger generation, they don't think about, I've had some guys that, they may never have kids again, put it that way, because of being on the gear, and taking too much gear. And I find that sad, It's, because they don't think about it. All they want to do is be big and be like Arnold. But even Arnold in his book, said, get to your genetic potential before, and he even mentioned steroids in his book, but get to your genetic potential first. And that's just hard work they get going. And that, that's training for 10 years. Head down, ass up, train for 10 years, eat right, don't go out on the weekends and drink. And, we used to have a guy, he frustrated the hell out of me, big boy. He'd come in every Monday morning and weigh himself, and he'd go, "Oh, Rob, I've lost 3 kilos." And I go, "Yeah, Dan, but mate, you went out on the weekend and got on the grog, didn't you?" He goes, "Yeah." And I said, "So you didn't eat for, all day Saturday, all day Sunday, you didn't eat, did you?" And he goes, "Oh, well, there's your 3 kilos that you've lost. Go eat again." And he puts on 3 kilos again. It's just, it's just
a recurring pattern.
It is.
But as you mentioned, I think when you're young, you probably don't think about what you're going to lose. And it's only when you get a bit older that things start to gel. Now, you sort of went through sort of a health scare yourself. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened?
Yeah, look, I was diagnosed with leukemia when I was 29. And, John, I was eating well. Like, I've always, tried to eat as healthily as I can. I was, probably about 106 kilos, 10% body fat. Thought I'd tear trees out of the ground going. And I'll never forget, the week prior, I was just really tired all the time. Still trained, but just tired all the time. And then I'll never forget the Sunday. I trained on the Sunday, and in between bicep curls, I would nearly pass out. And I thought, oh, there's something not right here. So went to the doctors on the Monday. They gave me antibiotics and sent me home. Still felt really bad. Went to the doctors on Wednesday. He blood tested me. Thursday, I had a phone call from them at 8 o'clock in the morning, so we need to talk to you. 1 o'clock, I was talking to the doctor. 4 o'clock, I was in Frankston Hospital getting a bone marrow biopsy. Stayed in overnight in a infectious diseases ward. About 8:30 the next morning, they came in and they said, "You've got leukemia, Rob. There's a bed waiting for you at Monash Hospital. We can either, you can get yourself there, or we can send an ambulance to take you there." I said, "Look, I want to go home and get my stuff." And 3 months later, I walked out of hospital going, in remission. So I was lucky. But I think that changed me forever. My wife gets frustrated a bit because I don't, I only think about today. I don't think about a lot about our future, and I probably should think more about that. Not that I don't, I still think about it, but I don't prioritise it as such. But, but again, and I'm not being a hero, but I walked out of hospital and I walked into a gym. The doctor said, "Don't do it." They said, don't train. I'd go and train for half an hour and I'd go home and sleep for 2. And I think mentally even the doctors were frustrated with me because I just said to the doctors, I just said, look, just hurry up and do what you need to do to me, because one less day in here is one more day out there. And I don't know whether it was, I don't know, but it was definitely an experience.
It sounded like, getting back into the gym was your happy place, where you felt most comfortable anyways. So it probably was good for you.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it gave me the discipline to get through it as well as I did too. It was there were some frustrating times, but there were some funny times too, I suppose. But it's
But you have mentioned that it has changed you, and you're living sort of day to day, not really worried about what's going to happen in the future. It's challenging to sort of create that for someone like, for example, the 30-year-old that you're training to understand what's at stake, because it's when you're older, you can advise them, but they're not going to listen to you if it hasn't really happened.
It's true. Yeah, it's true. I always say to people though, and it frustrates me a lot, and I said it to you, people just don't take their health they take their health for granted, and you can't be like that. You just can't, because I said, it doesn't matter how many Ferraris I had in the garage. When I had leukemia, that's it. It's just you. It's you and your body, and that's it. It's, you're fighting for your life then, aren't you? And I mean, you've been through a similar thing, so you can, I suppose, understand it greatly. And it frustrates me because I just can't understand how people cannot look after themselves better. I've seen people, 10 years younger than me, 15, 20 years younger than me, and they look 10 years older than me. And I just think, well, it's just a waste of life, because they're not going to live a healthy life, and longevity isn't going to be there for sure, and to me, it just frustrates me, I suppose. And, and some people, look, I know people that have been through similar things and they won't wake up. And I know other people that have been through things and the light, they have the light bulb go on. But, I suppose we're all individuals and we're all, but it is hard.
Going through
it's
our
frustrating,
own journey, I
suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're starting to sound like older people, but you can only imagine that when we heard this when we were young, and you're like, all right, Grandpa, stretch before you go into sports.
Yeah. What would you know? I know. Yeah, 100%. But last week, last week, one of my clients, he told me he had McDonald's, and I ripped him a new arsehole. And he goes, I was too scared to have McDonald's this week, Rob. I'm not doing it. And I go, well, good, So, I've made him think. So, yeah.
Yeah, but it's hard, and I understand why it's hard, because unless you go through your own journey, you probably think you're invincible. And I think there's someone once told me about this term called optimistic bias, where no matter how bad an incident happens, for example, someone dies, not close to you, but a friend or a friend's family passes away, you automatically feel sad, but subconsciously you feel that wouldn't happen to you. And it's sort of a protective mechanism, because you don't want to feel that something bad's going to happen to you, because if you did, you'll probably feel paralyzed by fear and not want to move on. So I think a lot of people, no matter what they hear, they may have heard your story, my story, or someone else, they're just thinking, oh yeah, that sounds terrible, and I feel for you, but it's probably never going to happen to me.
Never going to happen to me. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I agree with that for sure. Look,
what do you think about what do you think about stress being a big factor? Because obviously with a lot of the people that you see that have their own businesses, and as you mentioned, the multiple phone calls and feeling stressed, but how much do you think that plays a factor when they're training with you, and also the growth? You mentioned protein being a factor, that they're not having enough protein, they're not probably developing and growing as much. What about stress?
I think that plays a huge role, because it's weird, because I've trained a lot of different people, and, I've trained some very, very wealthy people with big businesses, and stress doesn't seem to worry them, and I've trained guys that have got small businesses, and the littlest thing, they come in and they look like they're just about to die. I think stress has I think it destroys our immune system, and that's me personally. I do. But it's also, how do we de-stress? And I think it's important to de-stress, and a lot of people will go home and they'll have a drink to de-stress, alcohol, instead of going to the gym and de-stressing with, the gym. And it's amazing how many guys you train in the afternoons and they've had a stressful day. They come in and, you might train for 45 minutes or half or an hour. And the first 20 minutes you can see, they're not there. They're not completely into it. They're not. All of a sudden, it switches gone, and all of a sudden, the shit of the day is gone, and they're actually focusing on training and talking a bit of crap with me. And a lot of guys say I'm their hairdresser. So they talk. They problem solve with me, I suppose. But and it's like a switch has been flicked, and then. Yeah. They might not only have 15 minutes that they haven't been thinking about their business or stressing over something, and they walk out a completely different person. So where's you go home, you have some drinks, there's a negative, and I always say there's 3 de-stressors. It's either drugs, alcohol, or training, So to me, you are stressed and you're tired, and stress will wreck you physically, mentally, whatever. Just make the effort. Just go to the gym and train for 45 minutes, but leave your phone at home or leave it in the car or leave it in the locker. And that's the other thing these days, even your smartwatch, leave it in the locker. I've got one client that I train and his watch is continually going off. And I said to Drew, mate, leave your watch in the locker because he's always reading the messages that's coming through on his phone. Yeah. But, I think stress is very, very detrimental to health, growing, everything. I really do. But it's what do we do to cope with that stress? And I think that's the key is coping with it in a positive way. And even if it's, go home and go for a walk down the beach or, but again, leave your headphones at home and your phone at home. So you're actually in the moment, with nature and, sniffing the salt air and being part of nature. I mean, how distressing is that sometimes? It's, but do something positive instead of something negative, And
I think you mentioned some of your wealthy clients that are, have big businesses and they have very little stress. But I guess it's also what they learned along the way, because they may have started as a small business and then eventually had
100%
had to deal with stress, and maybe it's also because that's the hardest thing is how do you gauge stress, especially negative stress, and how do you manage that? And I think a lot of people have not really learned the way to do it, and they do it in a way that worked for them for a small problem, so they feel like if they carry it on for everything else, it's going to help. But I think that's sometimes one of the biggest challenges. Now, when it comes to your health, obviously you're into your fitness. I have a segment here where we say, do you walk the talk? So on days that, you're feeling lazy or you're not feeling into it and you're feeling a bit flat, what do you do when you're starting to cheat the day, whether it come to your workout? What is your sort of, what would be your routines for your sort of health? I know you mentioned how you work out 4 times a week, but what other things would you do?
Well, I try to walk, I walk to work, walk home from work. We're lucky we live near the beach. So, I'll take the dog down the beach. I always train whether I feel like training or not, I just train, those 4 days. And then it's just whatever I do after that. But even taking the dog down the beach, again, though, how many people do you see go to the beach and they got their ear pods in or, and listening to podcasts and everything's great too, and listening to music. But are you really taking in? I think it's very good, especially salt water and salt air is very good for the soul. Go and, even go for a swim. It's very therapeutic. And to me, that's where, Katie and I will go, we might go for a bushwalk on a Saturday but if I'm feeling stressed and, things are really shitty, I'll go for a walk down the beach. That's probably my biggest, or I'll even go for a swim. In the middle of winter, I probably don't, but, certainly during summer and now already, I've already been in the water and it's not that bad. So for me,
I'll just try to... You're a bit proponent of nature. Yeah. You're a bit proponent of nature 100%. And sort of...
Yeah, 100% going. Holistic, I don't know, you might call me crazy, but I think we're all connected in some way, through energy, vibration, whatever you want to call it. I think, we're all connected in some way. And
Yeah.
I think nature and smelling, even looking at green trees and, going, walking in a forest, it's good for the soul. It
Mm.
just is, I can't explain it. For me, it's just good for the soul. I just feel great after it,
I think a
and
lot of
it's,
people have spoken about this, how nature is sort of healing. And, one way of de-stressing is actually to get out in nature, walking without any sort of technology and, your phones, as you mentioned. And I think it's actually, as you said, I don't think anybody can prove it, but there's obviously some energies there. And some people are more connected to nature than others. For others, it might be something else. But I think nature does have sort of a healing property. Now, on this show, I often end with sort of 5 tips you can leave us with that whoever's listening to this will benefit from. And I'll let you take it away from, you can do all 5 or you can do 3, whichever you want.
Well, look, I think, for anyone I think drink good clean water and up your water intake. That's probably the best tip that I can give anyone.
Yeah.
Focus on
When
your
you
food and
say,
eat whole food.
sorry to interrupt you, Rob, but when you say up your
Yep,
fluid intake, what are we talking about?
3 litres a day.
Yeah.
A
Okay.
lot of people won't even drink a litre. It's your brain, isn't your brain 85% water or something?
Yeah.
Our body's 75% water. We need fluid. So, and it makes you feel better. A lot of people that are dehydrated, it can make you tired, it can make you lethargic, it can make you feel pretty shit if you're dehydrated.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, I suppose their lifestyle isn't conducive either. So,
Mm.
to me, just drink good, clean, filtered water, eat whole food, and look, even if you change one meal, just do one meal a week. Just, and then do it, say you might start with breakfast. Everyone just eat breakfast for the first week and then change that to, so eat a good breakfast and eat a good dinner the second week and then eat a good lunch the third week. And you're nearly there, I think I did actually write these down, John, so I'll get into that. I think, it comes back to training too. If people are time poor, I find that diarise it. So, if you're busy, just make training an appointment. So put it in your diary, block it out, and that's it. It doesn't change. And, I've got a couple of clients who do that. They train with me at a certain time and nothing gets in their way. They will organise their day
Mm.
around those times. Because at the end of the
Mm.
day, the world's not going to end if you're an hour here or there. So
Mm.
diarise it. If you're really struggling to train, find a good PT, but find the right PT. Go and do personal training.
Mm.
What else was there? Eat adequate protein. That's probably the most important. Just make sure that, don't worry about anything else. Just make sure that you're eating enough protein. I think that's...
And how much protein do you get?
I do 1.2 grams per pound of body weight.
Okay.
So for me, yeah, it's about 200 and... Well, I have 6 meals of about 180 grams of, say, chicken,
Protein.
which is about 48 grams of protein each meal. So
Yeah.
that's why I
Okay.
weigh my protein. I just make sure that I get adequate protein in. I won't.
Yeah.
Fat's another one that, you can blow your calories out pretty quick with fat, but just make sure you're getting adequate protein. It'll make you feel better too. You'll train better,
Yeah.
you'll feel better, and your immune system will probably be a lot better for it too.
Yeah. Yeah. I found actually that when I increase my protein intake, I actually feel the recovery is heaps better, and I just feel less tired, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
100%. And that's where I think, because protein and fat is what repairs our body. So, focus on those two. The problem with protein is it takes discipline to prepare it, I think.
yeah, you're right. It's easier
and
to
a lot
eat
of people
carbs to
exactly.
fill in the day. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I always say, most people go, what am I going to eat? What carbohydrate am I going to eat? And then what am I going to have with that carbohydrate? And, again, not, it's just from a background, because I come from, a bodybuilding background. I always go, well, what protein am I going to eat? And then what am I going to have with that protein? So I reverse it. And, the carbs actually the last thing that I think about. It's always, what protein am I going to have? Am I going to have good fats with this? And it might be avocado. And then it's, what carbohydrates am I going to have? Whether it's just a salad or, I'm lucky my wife makes her own sourdough bread. So, it might be a piece of sourdough bread or, sweet potato or, but I always think, what protein am I going to have? Always. That's the first thing that I think about.
Yeah.
It's so important, and especially from a training perspective, Gan, it's even more important.
Yeah.
It really is. You're not going to get far if you don't eat adequate protein. And I've seen it. I call it protein deficiency, Gan. Every day we need we need X amount of protein, and if we're not taking that in, we're going to get further and further and further and further behind, and we're not recovering from the previous week's workouts. And you'll end up, your immune system will be the first thing that's compromised, I believe, and you'll just get sick all the time. You'll be tired, very, very lethargic, and everything will just feel like you're lifting a skyscraper. And I've seen guys come to me and I've talked to them about it, and they eat adequate protein, and some guys put on 2 or 3 kilos in a week because they've just haven't been, all of a sudden that they get this massive growth spurt because they're actually eating enough protein now. So it's very important. Very important.
Yeah. Well, Rob, first off, I'd like to thank you for sharing all those insights with us, because the reason I wanted you on the show is because you just have a wealth of knowledge that is balanced because of your experience as well. And I think you've obviously shared that here. And it's hard to get experience when you start off. Everyone wants to be gung-ho and they want to do the hardest thing, but you've seen it through different lenses. So thank you so much for your time and for coming on the show.
No worries, Carl. No worries. Thank you. I appreciate you having me on for sure.
This wraps up this episode of Peak Performance Hacks. All the links and resources are in the video description or in the resource section, whether it is on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you're watching this on YouTube, please consider subscribing. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave us a review so that more people can discover our podcast and it could benefit them as well. Until I catch you next time, speak soon.